Okay, so something I want to touch on today, and I want to thank David for bringing it up yesterday, is cross-platform development, especially in regards to developing with things like C Sharp, because nowadays it's really easy. It's not very cost efficient to start building an app for a specific platform unless you're using very specific tool sets that you need with that. One example is when I develop things for VR, they have what's known as the XR Interactive Toolkit. That's a great generalized controller setup to code with that allows you to get all the things you're already accustomed to in VR, rotating the controls, pressing buttons, things like that. And the thing is, if you use this XR Interactive Toolkit, you don't do specific mapping to just one device. You do kind of generalized mapping. And so that way, if you were to release it, you can release it on the Quest, you can release it on the Index. And because they're generally mapped, it should work across multiple headsets. But the thing is, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of, say, hand tracking using the Quest headset, you would have to use their framework, and like the Oculus SDK, their software that can be a little bit more fickle to work with and things like that. So if you want to make a general app, nowadays you want to look into something like cross-platform development, because if you build something for Android, it only works on Android. You need to redo the whole thing in iOS. So here we're going to be taking a look at Maui, previously known as Xamarin. Let's go ahead and even bring up Xamarin here.
It's not called Xamarin anymore?
No, it was bought by Microsoft a couple years ago. It might be still referred to as Xamarin, but do you want to build native blah, blah, blah? .NET Maui has been released. So I don't know if it's replaced the name, but this is basically how you access it now with .NET Maui. But this is Microsoft's version of cross-platform development. And when I say cross-platform development, what I mean is that you build a single app, and what happens is there's a framework or something that will, when you deploy, it will actually convert it into an app that will work on a specific device, be it Android, iOS, Mac, depending on the ecosystem. It just allows for a very efficient way of rolling out, and you can have a single team focus on it instead of a bunch of different teams and waste all that money. So we're going to go ahead and take a look into playing around with it today, because this is definitely an avenue you would want to look into getting started if you want to do cross-platform mobile development, and if you like C Sharp. Again, C Sharp is my favorite language, so this would be something that interests me. I've had people talking about Xamarin for years now. In fact, I remember bringing it up when I first got into programming about 5 years ago. So let's go ahead and take a look again, start and how to develop for it. First thing I do whenever I'm learning something new in general is I actually like to kind of plot out what I want to learn from this experience. So, and this is just like my good habits to know I'm on the right path. So I want to learn how to develop cross-platform app with C Sharp. Kind of cheating here, I know where I'm going, but I know I'm going to have to look into Xamarin, and then this leads me to .NET Maui. So I want to figure out how to build a Maui app. And then my end goal is going to be deploy an Android app using C Sharp, customize GUI. And this sounds more impressive than it is. It just means I can change the background someplace. But at least now I have an end goal. So I'm going to start with how to build a Maui app. So I'm going to come over here, tutorial.net Maui. It's almost like someone Googled this before. It's amazing. So Google this today, in fact. So this is the very first link that comes up. I'm going to go ahead and post it in chat. Dylan, again, if you could go ahead and copy this link, we'll put it online later. There you go. And then I had already gotten started on this because you never know. You never know when you're getting started on something. Like, we love tutorials, right? Like, tutorials are great. They hold our hand. The world is right. I don't need to be concerned, except for the fact that tech doesn't work that way, and it's very easy for something to go sideways when you're trying to do a tutorial, and all of a sudden, maybe, and if the correct me if I'm wrong here, anyone can correct me, but I feel bad if I'm following a tutorial and suddenly it doesn't work, and I'm like, this is obviously my fault because they've given me 5 steps to follow and I'm screwed up on step 2. um so
Like, what's wrong with me?
what have I done wrong with my life? Exactly. So that's why I try to learn what's happening. This is kind of why I'm walking through a tutorial in a little more depth, because it's not just about following the tutorial. It's about figuring out what you're asking of me and how to get it, because there will be steps missed. If you were to try to outline every single thing you've ever had to do with a single app or whatnot, your tutorial would be like 1,000 pages long. So I'll walk through the process for getting it installed and everything, and any little hurdles you might run into. So to start off with, what's important to know is you can't use your standard version of Visual Studio 2022. So the regular one that you downloaded off of Community, you actually have to use their preview version. And their preview version even has like a little icon that has the word preview on it. To download it, it's actually fairly simple. They give you the 3 links here. So I just went to the Community one, downloads it for you, run this installer. It will not conflict with your with the version of 2022 you already have on your computer. So feel free to download it. You'll still play with it in the same installer, so that's good. So then it tells us how we're going to be installing our modules. So just a quick call out, if anyone here has never worked on modules or installed modules after you've already installed your Visual Studio, what you want to do is a search. You would do Visual Studio, and then here it shows Visual Studio Installer. And when you click on that, your installer comes up. And this is the one that you control all your updates and everything. And so here you'll see all the versions of Visual Studio you have and any other ones you can download in the future. Again, this is the one that pops up after I've installed the installer. That's why you can see I have preview versions. So if you've already installed something but want to add a module, you come over to the version you want to work with, you click on modify, and it goes ahead and it brings up all the different modules you can add. And when I say modules, these are all the different packages that you can use in development for a very specific thing. So ASP.NET, let's say I want to install the stuff to do HTML, backend web stuff. I click on this, and you can even see it shows you all the things you can install. And it really kind of shortcuts it. Like, it will not add everything, but it'll add, this is the thing that Josh and I love, this live share. This allows us to type code. And if you were following me, you see it happen live on your screen too, and we could work on code together. Here, for what we're doing, it's this .NET multi-platform app UI development. This is the one using Maui. As you see, I've already had it clicked. I had it installed. It's like 15 gigs. This will not show up unless you're using the preview version. But once you click that, we should be good to go. I say should because while I've installed this, I have not tried to run it yet. So you are seeing real time, possibly a flaming dumpster truck of me trying to code something. So welcome. After you've gotten everything installed, I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to open up my Visual Studio 22 Preview Edition. The little box had preview in it. And with this, we're going to go to our next step here. So, all right, we're going to come down here. I'm going to create a new project, and I'm looking to do the .NET Maui app. So create new project. And I'm going to be lazy. I'm just going to search Maui, .NET Maui app. Next. Where do I want to put you? I'm gonna have to reorganize this. Also, I'll be hosting this on GitHub, so if anyone wants to look at the code later, you absolutely can. So I'm just gonna pop it into this folder. We're gonna call it First Maui App. So this is going to use .NET 6. This is the newest version, long-term support. You'll see it can look pretty different if you've been dealing with old school .NET. It will autocomplete more for you. It will possibly remove main because, you know, it doesn't like teachers. It doesn't like to make our life easy. And let's take a look at what we got going on here. This is what we get when we start our very first Maui app. Now I'm taking a look here as we see some errors. Android SDK licenses must be accepted. This is going to be important because we're now working on mobile app development. We're going to be working with different SDKs. So previously I've worked on Android stuff for both Android Studio and Android is used for Quest development. Here we're going to officially be using it with Maui. So what I did here was this little message, double click. It's like, it wants me to accept. It wants me to accept. If life is good, this will install without problem. On my old computer, life was very bad to me and I've spent hours trying to get this fixed, but we'll see how it goes. So far, so good. Just taking a look at some of these packages and dependencies. I see no huge error. There we go. By accepting, it probably downloaded all the packages that we needed. So we're running, which is a big deal to me getting started. Just without everything crashing, this is already a good start. Do this, agreed, worked on. Here we go. Wait for project to be created. Its dependencies to be restored. Can someone here tell me what a dependency is?
Is it just like a library or API or whatever that your app needs to run?
Basically, yeah. It's a group of code someplace else that you're using, and it's making sure that those connections are made. Otherwise, your code's going to be like, no. So yeah, I was right. And when we agreed to that Android stuff, it downloaded the .NET 6 Android stuff, and we were good to go. So the next hurdle that kind of scares me that we're going to try out is this. Use the debug target dropdown to select the Android emulator. And so it shouldn't be a scary thing, but again, I have PTSD from my Android history. So we're going to see how well this works. We're going to follow the exact steps. In the toolbar, use the debug target dropdown. Let's see now. I believe it's this. And then Android emulator. That's good. And then let's see here. We're just going to click. And then I get this pop-up that says Android Device Manager. This is something I recognize from my Android Studio time, so that's fine. Fantastic. So what's happening here, and for anyone who doesn't know what an emulator is, or specifically an Android device emulator, it's a program that mimics the functionality of a device on your computer. So here I'm not hooking up to an Android device. I am just hooking it, I'm just replicating a virtual machine basically on my computer that acts like an Android, even works like the OS and has all the touch screen functionalities. So that way I don't have to keep plugging in an Android device. So it gives us a basic one. The default is a Pixel 5, and you can install as many emulators as you want for all these different types, new phones, old phones, to test out your stuff. It's great. It's not to the same equivalent of actually having a device plugged in that you can use, but unless you have access to 100 different phones and want to swap them out, or there are even places that you can go to bring your app and test them out on multiple phones at one time. This is really the next best thing. So here it has to download some stuff, do some stuff. That's fine. Here we jumped the gun on this. When we double clicked, it immediately went to this step, which is fine. Agreeing to terms and conditions. Android emulator. Here we go. It's amazing how quick we are when we know what we're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. So it's still installing now. And once everything has properly been installed, what we should have is a C# project that can now run on Android. And what's nice about this tutorial is if we were to come all the way up to the top, you can actually choose your deployment device and the tutorial will swap. As we see here, in order to develop for iOS, we need to have a Mac build host. So Android's fairly easy to use. They let you develop on whatever. Mac is a little bit of a closed ecosystem, so you have to be prepared when dealing with that. But if we were to follow these steps and we had a Mac build host, by the end, we should be able to deploy to an iPhone. Same code and everything, right? They haven't changed any of the code. And also on Windows, you can also deploy it, and it would be a desktop app. So this is good. Let's see how we're doing on our, it's downloading right now. Let's take a look at the next step as we're going. Down here at the bottom of the tutorial, I'm super happy with this. They have a build mobile and desktop app, like have tutorial section. This is an education center where you can really play around with this stuff. I'm going to put the link to this too. Long story short, I expect everyone in here to be developing mobile apps by next week. Expect to show them off to the class. That goes for you too, Kristen. Let's see here.
Wow, shots fired.
Shots fired. And then you can make the RTC cross-platform app. So this is very cool. This is the first cross-platform app. I'm too lazy for that. We're going to go straight to this. Create a UI in .NET Maui using XAML, XAML. This is a great one I already started to look at because it also breaks down what some of these things are. Benefits of using XAML over blah, blah, blah. How to create pages, handle UI events. If you're doing with the RTC program, this actually builds upon some things we touched briefly on. So it's a great way to extend your vocabulary when it comes to adding events, your own custom events to things. So we're going to do benefits of using XAML. So as we were discussing before, a markup language is basically a bunch of tags that allow you to format what a page looks like using markup syntax. And the most common example is in HTML. Everything in here is behind the scenes just text. Text. And then the formatting is all controlled by this markup language. So P tag right here, we have an opening and closing tag. And this declares where the start of a paragraph opens and closes, and that dictates the spacing in between. And all these divs, all this stuff is just markup. So nothing super advanced. And so XAML is going to be really good to get the result we wanted without having to use like drag and drops. I mean, I'm sure we still could, but this is going to be some markup. And so David was asking earlier about if we're using XAML, how does C# kind of come into play when it comes to marking up? They give us the opportunity to use C# and then have XAML be generated from it. So this is we're going to be creating this in just a minute here. But as we can see here, this is all C#. And then we have a public main page. So this is just not necessarily, yeah, this is like a constructor. This is a constructor for our main page. And then here you can see we're affecting properties, this background color. On the layout, if you have experience working with Java and their GUI creation, this is like a nicer version of that, I would want to say. So we can choose the layout, and we have a vertical stack layout. This is their final example, so top to bottom. And then in here is we are affecting the children. And this looks like it's probably a list. Again, I'm not going to say I'm flying blind on this, but with my experience and the things I've done, I can tell when things are just, this isn't something magical, it's a collection. And so it's a collection that has, so this vertical stack has a collection of different objects, and then this is another collection inside. And then these are our new objects.
Sorry, this is all C# code, right?
Yeah, this is all C# code, and behind the scenes, it's going to translate to XAML. So we'll go ahead and take a look here. And again, when you're working with a framework, it may not look like C# necessarily, but this is still C# syntax. It's just the framework that they've built is to be used with their stuff, right? So it's you'll get used to it really quick. Things like this is shorthand for adding events and delegates. We're not going to dive into that now. I will think on that in the future. That's an advanced topic, but this is basically attaching an event so that when the button is clicked, it is calling this debug.writeLine. Let's see how our installation's doing. Looks good. Turn on Hyper-V. Oh, this is the thing that annoyed me. So this is something you can do to make your emulator more efficient. You actually, for me, I had to dive into my graphics card BIOS when starting up. So we're going to avoid that for now. We're just going to run anyway, because we're not doing something so intense. We need to have that going. But it will make, I think it's hypervisualization, if I remember offhand. You will respond. You should respond. We'll give it a second here, but let's take a look at this code and see what's going on. So we're going to, we have a couple, what did it generate for us? So we have a few XAML files. We have our C# file that starts to build things out. If you are new to playing with frameworks and maybe you've only seen things like Form 1 or Console, this is something you'll see far more often, which is, this is like a building page for your app that really gets everything up and running. It depends on the different things you're doing, but it's very common to see this, especially if you open up an ASP.NET file, you'll see things that are just directing to different files and executing them to get your project up and running. Somewhere, someplace, somehow, there is a main, I promise you. We're just not going to find it today. Side note, this is chaining commands. Does anyone know what the term chaining means? You keep nodding.
Connecting or in succession, doing them after each other.
It's basically it's just like, instead of you calling a single method and then you get a result, then you call a method on that and get a result, you're actually calling one thing after another. So it's like, on this, we're calling this and getting this. And then, so it chains a bunch of things one after another. And then when it all resolves, you're good to go. So here, what's happening is they create this, we are creating a builder. And so the builder, it's actually building this entire thing. And then it's calling this create builder. And on this builder, we're using this method, and then we're configuring fonts. So we're configuring the fonts of our apps, and I see you. And it's doing all this stuff without us having to do individual line by line. And then once it all resolves, we're able to call build and return the build. So, and it actually returns a Maui app. So this, I'm annoyed by you. We'll see how much luck we have running that later on. But let's go back to the example they showed to us. This is what it's supposed to look like when done, so we can at least get a visual example of what's happening. And let's see if we can't see what's happening here. So this is all markup. This is all XAML. And so we have our image. This is the .NET bot right here. Semantic properties descriptions, cute.NET bot. So probably like if I hovered over it, we would get this kind of pop-up. Height request 200. I'm guessing these are in pixels. Horizontal option centered on the page, right? And so scroll view, again, if anyone here has done Java, you know, when you're creating a GUI, you can't, it's not going to automatically scroll. You actually have to have a scroll view and then put things inside of it. It's just containers inside of containers inside of containers. Again, much like HTML. So here we have our image tag, and then we're affecting properties. And if we think back to our HTML, it's not going to work here, but I just wanted to show as an example. When we do our HTML, we have our source, which is our picture location. And then we can do things like style equals, and then we can do things like width 500, height 200, things like that. This is written almost exactly the same. So it translates pretty easily once you get started with it. And so here, now you can stop yelling at me. I didn't do anything so much that you guys need to keep yelling at me. There we go. Label, next in line reads top down, hello world, another label, and a button. And the button is something we'll definitely be taking a look here at in a second. But as we can see, starts with content page, scroll view, vertical stack layout. So if there's vertical stack, let's see if we can't change something. How lucky are we? So what I did was I just double clicked on this tag and I did control space to bring up my IntelliSense, and it actually shows us different options we have. So let's see now, horizontal stack layout, changed both of them. This would change, it would probably now be built horizontally rather than vertically. And so with just little things like that, we can completely change the layout. And we can test out this kind of format on anything. So I double click on image, control space bar, and we see we have all of our options here: pages, pickers, radio buttons. Be the lazy programmer. Use IntelliSense to speed things up for you. So let's try this again. See if it likes us. I will remember you. I will remember you. Unexpected system image featuring emulator might not function. Please try updating the emulator. I just installed you. So we're going to try our next step here. We're going to try installing a different emulator. So what I'm doing is I came over to my ADM, the Android Device Manager, and now I'm going to click New. And how I was talking about how you can have all these different Android devices, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drop down. I'm just going to select. They give us all these options. Let's just do a Pixel 4. I don't want anything advanced. And then let's see now. Which architecture? I think I'm using x86-64. This is kind of your chipset. This is the kind of chipset you want to run on here. So I believe this should work for me. I'm going to stick with Android 12. And this should be fine. And you have all these different options you can tweak here. So you can say, all right, I want how much space to, this is going to take up 2 gigs. And yes, every emulator will take up this amount of space. I once had 8 emulators and they were taking up 16 gigs a piece. So I had 100 gigs taken up just by emulators. Fast reboot, accelerometer. So I could actually test the accelerometer, which on your phone is if you rotate it, it knows which way it's moving and will respond in kind. I can replicate cameras, directional pads, different densities. You can go to town on this. So we're going to create, it's going to ask me to accept this. I don't know what it means, but I'm accepting it because I want something to work for my people here. So we will find out what's going on. We'll run unaccelerated. Didn't I agree to you already? I would be lying if I said that this isn't almost exactly like what happened when I was playing with Android Studio. So you're gonna have to fuss with it when you first get started. After your Android development gets set up properly, it's smooth sailing. but the first time since I haven't developed an Android on here in a bit, it's a process. We can look into it in the future. So, but this is basic syntax for a markup language. And let's see if we can't find out how this transforms into C#. Let's take a look at some of these other things. We got style, images. So we got resources. And these folders are organized like this for a reason. A lot of times this stuff will actually be specifically named and structured in a way that you will reference it inside of your project using such things as just like a resource object, and it would access everything in there so you can access files and whatnot. You'll want to take a look. I know Android Studio works like that. I know Unity works like that. Resource is your resource file in Unity is actually a very specific folder that will be loaded in a different way than other folders to make sure your files are properly accessible. So you want to be careful with that because you don't want to load things that won't be used. That just takes up resources. Let's take a look at settings. Machine name, nothing too impressive there. Let's go back here and see what I want to see here is this. Because that looks like a link. Here's our C#. This is what it started with. So on our main XAML, we have our button. It's been given a name, counter button. It has some text on it. It's going to say click me. Counts how many times it's been clicked. Notice here, and this is technically all one line. This is all a single line. It's just been spaced, so it's easier to read. But we have clicked. This is how you can attach an event to something in XAML. So they say clicked, and then it has this on counter clicked. So if we click over here, we notice on counter click is here. So that means downloading. All right, good. It is specifically calling this method. So let's say in the future, I want to do a different method that I may want to attach to it. I might actually do something like private void, click this now. And has anyone here created their own events before? I'm going to take that as a yes from the crowd. I like it that you guys are more advanced than me. So we're not going to create our own custom event, but I am going to create a method that I can attach as an event. So here, can anyone tell me what these parameters that we're passing in are? Like, what exactly is object? What exactly is event? Is there a purpose to them? Can we do anything with them?
Object is the base class for like the whole C#, isn't it?
Yes. It's I refer to it as like the God object, the thing that everything inherits from. This is literally anything can be passed inside of here. Absolutely anything. If I were so inclined, I could probably do on counter click and pass in like button, new button, and I could pass in something like that. The reason this is as an object is because this method is being attached on an object, and this can be attached on a button. This could be attached on a drop-down window. It could be attached to any number of things. So we're doing a generic object. The sender is the object that is being clicked or interacted with. So when we do sender, if I do dot, you can actually get what the thing is. So this is how you would actually get the information to say, hey, this is this object, this button clicked on it. You could even get the name of button. So this way you could respond to whatever the button click is. In fact, I forgot, I don't remember if you did, I think you do it in Java. When you're setting up your events, you can make it so that instead, I know you do this in Android Studio, instead of you having an individual event for every button, what you do is you add like the same event to all buttons, but then inside of the event, what you do is you get the object that's being clicked on. So you would do something like this dot object dot get name. And so it'll return if it's button click me, button increase, button decrease. And then you would have an if statement that would actually respond to it. So you have one method, but inside of there, you have all your method calls for all your different buttons. Is that something you did with Java, or is that something only with Android Studio?
I think that I've encountered really similar things in JavaScript.
I believe it. Because yeah, like if you could attach event listeners for a ton of stuff. And in our front end dev class, we were pulling, oh, what is this click? What's this variable name? What's this ID name, right? And so, yeah, we could absolutely do the same thing. So with sender, that's kind of how we would do it. We could grab that information. Event arguments are literally the event that's being called. So like it's a click event, it's a scroll event, things like that. And you can get the arguments related to that. Because there's all this stuff is information being passed around. So you're going to want to respond in different ways. The thing that we have not talked about is how much information is happening on a WinForm. In fact, I might do this. I have a programming 2 class coming up in fall. I might dive a little bit into how much information is being passed around. So that way, you know how to respond to it, what you can do with it, how you can change things. Because like here with sender, if I wanted to, the same way with JavaScript, where if I added an action listener for a click event, and then I said this, and I said, all right, change this color or get this word, it allows me to interact with the object that I'm putting it on. And because I'm doing that, I can now put that same event on a ton of different things, and it'll respond differently based on the object that's working with. And that helps really reduce code. I'll probably play around with. Go ahead.
I'm pretty new to C#, but I was wondering, are there any restrictions to using that generic object class?
Yeah, so you usually don't use the generic object class because everything has a purpose, right? Like if I just said David came in the room, but all I knew is David was an object, I'm like, cool, is David a lamp? Is he a bowl of ramen?
Okay, yeah, exactly. So like in those scenarios, would it like if you're unsure about like what the object will be passed, like you're unsure of the object that will be passed into the method, can you just use the object, like the object class freely, and then do the check later, like afterwards?
That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. You wouldn't do object. In fact, what you would probably do, and something you've already seen come up, even just wandering around here, is, do you know what the keyword var is?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, I do. But the problem is when you're using the keyword var, I feel like it didn't have the behavior that I expected, you know, like if var was like an object of a string, right? Then like if I use var, like the app had trouble compiling if I tried to like check if it's a string or if it's an int or whatnot. I'm not really sure. I don't have much experience with C#.
No worries, but you're still asking the right questions. var is kind of a tricky thing in general, and I think you're running upon the trickiness. Because C# is a strong lead type language. It's built as such. var allows us to kind of get around it because it is, I forgot if it's compile time. Is var real or compile time?
I think I don't think var stays as a var after compile.
I don't think so either. Yeah, it's compile time. You're exactly right. And so for anyone watching who doesn't know what we're talking about, C# is a compiled language, meaning all your code, when you hit build, your C# will actually compile that code. It will build it into an executable. It's almost like if you have a bunch of individual parts for a car, this is building the car, so it's ready to go. So all you have to do is turn the key and the engine will run. So it's what's happening here with var is that you're assigning all these things to var and doing all these things with var, and var is trying to figure out what exactly are you trying to do. It's trying to infer what this object is. It's like, okay, is this an int? Is this a string? What kind of object is it? And you'll see it used for everything. A list of different types, full-blown objects. To me, it's kind of like defeating the purpose a bit of strongly typed language. So yeah, with like var, if you don't know what you're getting or what you should be expecting, you still have to do all those checks for types.
Yeah.
All right, var, are check for type of string. And for anyone who may not remember, if let's say this string dot get type equals type of string, right? And so what's happening here is that we're using this built-in method, this get type, and it will return whatever type this object is. And then we're using this method type of to say, hey, is this thing actually a string? And in response to that, you can now do your code. These are all validations. And so, yeah, this is very much a thing you have to watch out for. Honestly, with object, it's even more fickle because you would need to, when something's passed in, you would need to be casting it and hope it works. So var is actually more efficient in terms of that because it gets you to a certain point, right? It's going to try to figure out, oh, is this? And then it's like, oh, it's a string, or it should have been an int, and then you can work from there. Whereas
yeah, but thing is, if the data after you compile, if the data like you can't like the data type of that var variable that we create after compile, it can't change.
No, it's locked it into something, so you're still going to have to be converting it. I think there is something, and I'm going to bring it up, and say you might not want to do this, but
have you heard of the view bag in ASP.NET?
Love the view bag.
Yeah. So how the hell do you get something like the view bag in a strongly typed language?
It's so, long story short, the way maybe even just in my head, but I see everything is like everything when being passed around on some basic level is a string. And when we have types, what it's saying is that when it gets to a destination, it's more than just a string. So when you have something like a view bag in ASP.NET or whatnot, you can absolutely, it just says, hey, this is going over there as this object, and it will receive it as such. Your C# still dealing with it like regular objects. So even though it's just packaging it up, it's still dealing with its own strongly typed way. Yeah. If I may ask, like, what exactly have you been playing around with? Because these are great questions and definitely great concerns. Because for anyone who's not aware, types, like strongly typed and all this stuff is key to making sure your code works properly, doesn't break, and your validations work. Because anyone who's worked in JavaScript, which is not a strongly typed language, who's had to validate for a ton of things or has not validated, and all of a sudden their code starts breaking, this is the kind of stuff that like strongly typed tries to help prevent on some level.
For me, I just thought that it would be it might be efficient. So if you're building a website and you want your index page to display like different things, right? I was wondering if there's a way that you can like set the model for that page to be some sort of like dynamic object. So like it just changes like depending on what object is being passed in.
Oh, that's a great point. At that point, like, are your objects drastically different from one another, or are they fairly similar with just like?
I was just wondering if like how far I can push the limits, and because like the alternative is the long cut.
Yeah.
Because it's strongly typed.
Yeah, I would definitely say keep in mind, and so there's you open up the door for other conversations, which For me, you're just giving me material for future summer bridges. But there's all these different things we can start discussing. One of the key things would probably just be things like inheritance and whatnot. So let's say you have something, if you're going to have similar objects. So it's like, let's say you were doing a storefront, they should all have similar data set or data fields. But let's say you did have variations on things. You can have it inherit from like a parent class.
Yeah, I can definitely see it working from the point of inheritance, but I can't figure out to get it working from like the point of, hey, so like this is a dog, okay, now this is a cat, okay, now this is a house.
At that point, like
and this is a pizza, I don't know.
Oh my god, a cat pizza. At that point, you would want to, there has to be some through line, and then otherwise you're like, because like how would it know what exactly, like if all these things had a price, you can even have them all have an interface, right? And so then we know they're, at least no matter what, they're going to have a price, and we got that. So that might be one way of approaching it. But unless it did something, and I'm not saying it can't, I just don't know off the top of my head, where let's say it read every field. Oh my god, this might be a reflection thing. Now I'm going to have to look at reflection. It looked at every field and automatically knew to pull all those fields and then to create a table, say, off of those fields. I don't see why you couldn't do that. That will be a conversation for another day, because that's
for sure.
That's good stuff. Also, have you heard of reflection before?
No.
So this is all right. I'm gonna, Dylan, here's another one for you.
Like I know of the type that, you know, like you reflect in your diary, but I'm not sure what you mean in this context.
Instead of a diary, it's the object. Reflect. So in fact, when we do, if I'm correct, when we do this get type of, instead of you're getting stuff from the object, you're actually going into the object. You're finding information about the object. So you can now, reflection is about going into the object and finding the nitty-gritty details about that object and even influencing the object. So it's a fairly advanced thing, and I don't know for sure, but I feel like reflection might be a way to get the result you want. I'm gonna have to reach out to Josh about this now. You've sparked something in me, and I appreciate that. But reflection.
Wait, but the thing is, like, this would defeat the point of a strongly typed language for sure.
It would definitely not be the purpose of it now. But that being said, what you're using it for isn't the biggest deal. Like, if you were just displaying data, but once you started to try to do things with the data that were inherently unique to objects, you're either going to have a ton of validations. So is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Just to then cast it to the object. Like I would use it for yours. I would use it as a really general thing, because also, like, if you were just displaying all tables, because at this point it would be like really good for database stuff, right? But if you were displaying it for doing anything else more unique with these objects, you'd still have to be casting it, right? Now we got to bring up reflection. This is reflection is not programming one, just to let everyone know, but still I love it. And you may have drawn attention.
What quarter are you in?
I just graduated with the AAS.
Okay.
Wait, what about all of you guys? Or
this is gonna be my 5th quarter, I believe, going into fall.
Oh wait, are you taking CSI 242?
We're taking client side and data structures and algorithms next quarter.
I had fun in 242.
Remind me which one that is.
JavaScript.
Oh, is that the client side one?
Yeah, I don't think Matthew's teaching it though. I'm not sure who is. So it'll probably be different.
I heard it's Josh, and I'm hoping.
Yeah, Josh is teaching your next quarter.
Yeah. Our Matthew's gone on to Oxford to go after his master's, and that is amazing. He needs to go represent RTC. That's wonderful. David, were you helping Matt build things?
Yeah, we kind of worked on an HTML, CSS / JavaScript sandbox, and it's also like it has some Code Academy functionality.
Yes. Okay. I was wondering. Matt has mentioned you, and everything he said is true in a very good way. Yes, you have a bright future ahead of you. And yeah, you are so, and a reason that you can ask these questions and they are pertinent to what you're doing and everything is because a lot of the things you've done and are directly in response to you trying to execute things in relation to what they are. And so I can understand now specifically when you ask about receiving objects, like, because if you do something like a compiler online, it's much harder than just being like, hey, what is this name? You have to look into it, find these things, do all this stuff, right? So I will do what I can to find out. Anytime you have a question, just ping it out to me. I'll see what I can find for you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. This is frustrating me, I'm not gonna lie, but that's Android in a nutshell. So anyone who's watching this, just know that, yeah, if you have trouble with Android, it's going to take, you will have to dive into things like Hyper-V, getting it working properly. You will have to Google search some of these errors that you get to pop up. And unfortunately, I can't do it here because it's probably going to involve restarting my computer. But once you get it set up, you're good to go. And as we've already been looking at with the syntax here, it's really not difficult in order to start writing your code for your app. Now, again, this is the start of a far larger conversation, which happens to be, what do you want to do with some of this stuff, right? Like how far do you want to go? Because there's a difference between creating a single page that has a button that says click me on it and creating all these amazing GUIs and everything that you see, creating these multi web page apps. Fun fact, when you're working on Android and you rotate your phone and the app turns, it is actually destroying the previous version of that app and not opening up a new one, but it's like, it's actually a different page that's opening up on the horizontal. So it has to pass data from the vertical version to the horizontal version and vice versa. So that's why it's not the quickest thing in the world. I just thought it was really cool. You learn so much stuff when playing with this. But definitely look into building, if you want to look into getting into the responsive web space in the future, look into building things with like .NET Maui, Java, cross-platform, mobile development. Just do a Google search here. Codename 1, I'm not sure how popular it is, but it did just pop up. So we'll just make sure Google thinks that I'm a genius and was looking for this specifically. In fact, if you look, this layout is almost exactly like the Xamarin page. So Java, we'll do codename 1, passing this on to you, Dylan. Python, cross-platform. Here we go. We even have a selection. People love their blog articles. And with a selection, keep in mind that we have so many different options for doing these things, displaying these things, working with these things, that you will want to do some research. It never hurts to get your feet wet. As you saw, even though I'm having a little issue running it, I've still got Maui running on my computer, and I've become stronger because of it. Definitely look into different apps, see what they do, different frameworks, and see if it suits your needs, and start diving into it. You can even see how popular something is. Like Radio is a beautiful web UI developer, for machine learning projects. How specific is that? Find the tools you need to build the thing you want to build. Go get the job. So here's another cross-platform one. They all have like the same 3 columns structured. Someone has been playing with Bootstrap. Let's see here. Another one for you, Dylan. And then because I want to be rounding this out, we're going to do C++ cross-platform development. Ooh. Is this, oh, it's just someone's blog about how we should do it. Let's see now. This one, it doesn't look, it's a larger conversation with C++. So we can look into it in the future. But right now, if you want to start diving into mobile cross-platform development, look up Java, C#, or Python options. There are a ton of them out there. All right. Does anyone have any questions about our Maui installation or the nonsense that is that I can't get this emulator working properly right now? So, and just to let you know, if this was working properly, we would actually see an exact replication of the phone that I chose to emulate. And I will show it off in the future. I might even do it later today and pop up another vid, but you will see it working. You can drag on it, you can click on things and interact with it like it was a real Android phone. So they're really neat. Questions?
No. Let's hook up a C# app to a database.
Ooh. Let me.
Wait, hold on. Maybe you can just use Entity Framework for that, perhaps.
Entity Framework is the best thing in the world.
Okay.
So what David's referring to is like Entity Framework and ASP.NET and all that stuff. It is. So the short answer with all of this is it's basically doing the same. It's just short, giving you a bunch of tools to quickly connect to things like databases and all that stuff. You could also do it with C#. In fact, I did it with Angular and JavaScript and MySQL. I don't know. I have to check to see how MySQL is doing on here, or my SQL Server is doing on here, because I haven't dealt with SQL in a while. But how about we leave that for another class, because I really like that. And I think that's a very important one.
Yeah, I think one thing that I also found missing from the AES program was that none of the classes taught us how to connect to a database like inside of like a desktop environment.
I know what you're talking about. I think that's a very important thing to nail on. Within the next, let's do next week, because I want to review and make sure I have all the information I need for you.
Yeah,
but
for sure. I'll also look into it because I've been working with entity frameworks a lot, but not just in the context of Maui. But I'll look into it and then I'll ping you as well if I figure something out.
I love that. We'll share knowledge, and our shared knowledge will be everyone's shared knowledge.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. If there are no more questions here right now, I'm going to just stop recording, and I will have this video online. I'll make sure everyone has this video. If anyone has any questions after watching this video, feel free to reach out to me, wkrem@rtc.edu, and go build mobilely responsive websites. Go build the next TikTok or Discord or something. Make us proud. Bring students into RTC. You all have a good one.
You too. Have a good one.